Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now, D.C., it's a totally safe zone. It's called a safe zone. That's a term. It's a term of art. It's a safe zone because it's very safe. You can walk down the street now and nothing's going to happen. No crime, no murders, no nothing. Because we had a lot of problems with certain places, and we still do. All run by Democrats, or for the most part, run by Democrats. So what they're trying to do with the Epstein...
Okay, we're going to pop back out now. Initially, the question he took or comments he was making related to the Epstein files, you heard him there call it a Democratic hoax. That's even after all of what we've heard in the past hour from so many survivors of abuse detailing what they have experienced. I want to bring back our panel who is with me, and just let me come back to Eric Fudali, who has represented a number of Epstein survivors. The president now talking about other matters. What is your reaction to what we've been hearing this hour, and then what we just heard from the president?
I just don't understand what the hoax is. We just all watched as many survivors of Jeffrey Epstein told their story. I was fortunate enough to speak at the rally that was running parallel at the Capitol with multiple survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking about their truth, speaking about their stories, speaking about the fear he instilled, and just begging, all of us just advocating and begging this Department of Justice to release the files, stop slow rolling, stop giving us these behind the closed door interviews. Stop giving us bits and pieces. Stop giving Ghislaine Maxwell a platform. Just release the files. Where is the hoax? These are real victims, real survivors with real stories whose lives were devastated by Jeffrey Epstein and those who enabled him. And all they want is full transparency, full exposure, and full closure. There's no hoax. These are real people.
Yeah, Lisa, some of these women, as we mentioned, are speaking out for the first time today, telling their stories. It's got to be so incredibly difficult to relive the trauma, to put themselves out there. One of these women is Marina Lacerda, who was previously identified as minor number one in court documents. What more did we learn?
Marina Lacerda, in some respects, is very representative of the larger body of Jeffrey Epstein victims. She talked about how she was recruited to his townhome on East 71st Street here in New York when she was 14 years old, about to start her freshman year of high school. She's a Brazilian immigrant. She said she was working 3 jobs to support her mother. And eventually, Jeffrey Epstein began to call her so frequently through his assistant, Leslie Groff, for massages that she dropped out of high school. It completely changed the course of her life. And even so, you could sense the trauma still sticking with her. I think in many respects, Marina Lacerda, even though not known to us before today, is very much in keeping with what we know about the particularly young victims that Epstein recruited and how he and others in his orbit exploited the vulnerabilities of girls with terrible home lives, immigration issues, they were new to the country, or who had experienced poverty in their own personal circumstances before coming into his employ, Anna.
And I want to play a little bit of what we heard from these survivors. This was Haley Robson describing being coerced into having to recruit more girls to work for Epstein and be exposed to his abuse, and what happened to her when a friend's stepmother eventually called the police. Let's watch.
The police treated me like a criminal. I had, by this time, had turned 18. I had been with Jeffrey since I was 16 and for 2 years. So they had told me So they told me I was going to be arrested. My name was then distributed to the press as a co-conspirator of my abuser, who I detested. My entire world was crashing in around me, and I started being threatened and bullied, till this day still receiving death threats.
Mimi, I mean, wow. How much courage did it take for these people to come forward and tell their stories in such a public way?
Yeah, it really does. And I found everything that happened today just so moving. And it's worth noting that part of the power is this sort of sisterhood, frankly. I mean, including the family members who are not women, but, survivors find strength in each other. And more survivors will come forward. And, our views, our understanding of sexual assault and how trafficking works has evolved a lot since the time that happened to that young woman when she was criminalized, essentially, even though she was really a victim. And the Southern District of New York, my old office, in 2019, successfully charged and brought to justice Ghislaine Maxwell for being a trafficker, for being a child predator. And the last thing I would note is that what is so striking is that part of the answer to the why now from these survivors is you, government, you, DOJ, not political, but you, the Department of Justice, are trying to undo that one sliver of justice that we got. Maxwell was held accountable. Epstein, was charged and would have gone to trial. And now you, the DOJ, are giving her a platform, Maxwell, to lie. And that is what really seems to have spurred them forward. So the Department of Justice needs to get back to what it's supposed to do, which is represent victims and listen to survivors.
And Eric, one of the other things that stood out from Haley Robson, the woman we just played in that clip, was that the lack of transparency, the lack of having all of the information out there has led to rumors, has led to these conspiracies, and in effect has caused even more pain for these survivors, even more traumatization for these survivors. It's one of the reasons they say, put it all out there. Let's get the truth out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I would also even go as far to say is re-victimization of these survivors. They have to, every time they turn on the TV or open their, social media, they have to see Epstein's face. They have to see news of Ghislaine Maxwell being moved to a minimum security resort. They have to see Ghislaine Maxwell being given a platform to deny things and create her own conspiracies. Without transparency, we have nothing but rumors. We have nothing but nonsense is what we have. All the victims want. They don't care what side of the aisle is benefiting from this. They don't care who was on the plane more. All they want is transparency. They don't want a lot. They just want transparency and be able to have the closure that they deserve, the justice that they've been seeking for decades and decades, where law enforcement has wronged them every step of the way. That's all they want.
So Donald Trump is now calling the Epstein files a Democrat hoax. Let's pause on that for a second, because this is a big claim, and it deserves more than just a headline reaction. Here's my take. Whenever Trump is confronted with something messy, something that could damage him or people close to him, his go-to move is to rebrand it as fake, a hoax, or a witch hunt. We've seen it with investigations, we've seen it with the courts, and now we're seeing it again with the Epstein case. Now, let's be real, the Epstein files aren't some made-up story. They contain actual names, testimony, and evidence connected to one of the most disturbing scandals in recent history. And people across both political parties have been linked to Epstein in one way or another. This is not a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. It's a power issue. It's about how the elite, people with money and influence, have been able to operate in the shadows, and how many of them want to keep it that way. And here's what gets me. By calling it a Democrat hoax, Trump isn't addressing the actual questions people have about who was involved, what was covered up, and why justice hasn't reached the highest levels. Instead, he's turning it into a partisan blame game, which only divides us further and distracts from the truth. But let me throw this back to you. Do you think Trump really believes it's a hoax, or do you think this is just another defense mechanism to keep his supporters from looking too closely at the details? For me, I think this is where we as everyday people need to step in and say, we don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent. If your name's in those files and you were involved in Epstein's crimes, you need to be held accountable. Period. No spin, no excuses, no hoax labels. So let's talk about it. Do you think Trump is protecting himself, protecting his allies, or do you think he's genuinely right that this whole thing is overblown? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this one is going to get heated. And if you're tired of political leaders dodging accountability, Hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe, because these are the conversations we need to be having.